Hello and welcome back. Won't have too long of an intro today. Kind of want to get just plowing right into it. So what I've been working on since I got the rear section done is cleaning up this toe board area to see what I want to keep and what I need to cut out and replace. So if you recall from some of the videos I did on replacing the lower pillar here, there was a flame cut hole here where there was, this little crunchiness going on, some rust perforations there, and kind of a rough hole. So I cut that out, and then I cut a little bit larger section just so I could kind of see where this brace went in relation to the firewall, and so I can see it from the front side and all, but I wanted to see just how high up I want to take the floor patch. So I had this full panel that stretches all the way across the toe board area, but I don't really need to replace the transmission hump. It actually looks really good. So I took about, golly, it might have been an hour and a half really, to clean all the goo off of this thing. So I pulled the panel off, but first I had to use like a putty knife scraper to take this the sealant that was on it off, just enough to see the screw heads, and then longer still using my little soft bristle wire wheel thing on the Eastwood like stripping tool, and then also use the roll-lock discs and stuff to get it all cleaned up. Just took a long time, but I wanted to see if there was any rust pitting underneath that seam sealer like there was in some of the other spots, and it looks perfect. No issue at all there. So I'm going to leave that. So the plan is to come through. I haven't figured it. I think I want to leave this where it tumbles over where it is and make my cut on this vertical line right here. It'll make it a little harder to grind from the inside of the floor. On the inside curves, it's harder to grind and get that smooth. But in the firewall area, it'll be an outside hump, so it'll be easier to clean and smooth off, so you can't see the weld repair on that side. And that's also what I was looking at when I cut this hole, was to see where, and I'll go around the other side, where on the forward side this brace got to, and kind of how much room I've got in here to work with for cleaning up my weld whenever I weld across. So I'm going to get my tool out and kind of strip down the seam sealer that's existing right here where the existing toe panel overlaps. Probably drill out the spot welds that I see here, and then use the piece of this panel, because I just rough cut it oversized. Probably hold it up, trim it, and just zip cut right along. I haven't figured out if I want to do it through two panels or just one. I also have a little bit of cleanup left to do here. It might be kind of hard to tell in this, I don't know. There's a couple of pieces of sheet metal here. One is the toe panel as it goes down to the bottom of this brace, but there's another layer on there from not this floor, but the floor patch that was put on this spot. So I was working on cleaning it up. I didn't get that 100% because I knew I was cutting basically that whole flange from the toe board section that bonds with the front of the floor off anyway. But yeah, I need to kind of pull this thing up around or something, get to it so I can clean off all of the sheet metal that's attached to the brace and just leave the brace itself. Yeah, then I'll get in here and cut all these spot welds, get this whole panel cut out after I get the new one trimmed down to what I want, and I'll get the passenger side here first as a learning experience, and then on the driver side, I start off pulling the brake handle. Some of these screws and bolts I had to weld another screw to in order to get it out. These were the ones that hold the bracket that supports the parking brake up into the console, and they weren't like rusted or messed up. It was like a proprietary bit that I didn't have to get this thing out. It was like a double D shape, and I didn't have the bit to get it out. Didn't want to mess with it, so I just did this. Probably replace it with like a socket head cap screw, maybe get some stainless ones, something like that. Use an Allen wrench to put it together. And then some of these others, I took just scrap bolts that I had welding to it to get it out. This is, I think, a screw that held the gas pedal to the floor, and just the head was so corroded that I couldn't get it out of there. Had one of these flat screwdriver pieces. I think this one was used to hold the dimmer switch. That's what that one was. So this one I could get out with the screwdriver just fine. The other one I had to use a welder to get this thing off, because it was one of these. It was so corroded that you couldn't even get the screwdriver in there. I tried using like a little body saw to cut a new channel to put the screwdriver in, and it just wasn't going. But anyway, came over here, got it kind of cleaned up enough where I laid the whole panel, the whole toe board panel in across both sides, just to see how it laid in and fit up, and it actually looked really good. But I'll probably do the same cut over here that I plan on doing on the other side, just zipping up here all the way across and then down, and you can see just how rotten this thing is. It's pretty crunchy over here. And I also need to deconstruct. I still had the brace here that goes around the floor brace, so I need to cut the rest of this one off so I can get the room to get access behind here, clean up. There's a little bit of crunchiness on this inner like toe board like kick panel thing on the side, so that needs to be cleaned up. There's some rot right there, so I've got a lot more work to do on the driver's side. So I'm just wanting to get the passenger side tonight, maybe over the next 2 days. We'll see how I get going on it. But yeah, get the passenger side done as a learning experience, then I'll go on the driver's side. And here's what that panel looked like, the hump, that cover that's on the hump. So this is the top side of it, and you can see all the leftover goo. It took forever to get all that off, but it was so seam sealed that you wouldn't even be able to get the panel off to access anything. So I haven't made 100% decision right now, but I am thinking about, whenever I put this thing back on, literally just maybe putting those screws in, maybe. And I might just hold it up in place and weld up where the screw holes are and put a couple of tacks and call it done, because I'm not going to be using that really to get in there. I don't know. Maybe I want to get into it, but it would take a heck of a lot of seam sealer to fill that thing up whenever it's installed, which is what they had to do, goop it up. It was literally this wide, just massive, in order to get that thing sealed, and I don't really want to do that. So probably put a nice bead of like black RTV or something like that on there, and then yeah, I don't know, we'll see what I feel like when I put it on there. But yeah, it's gonna take forever just to get that panel clean. It's so gooped up. Anyway, I'll get this thing clamped up. We'll start doing some time lapse and detailed stuff, and I'll stop as always if there's something interesting I want to point out. So stay tuned and we'll get after it. I think that about does it for tonight. I'm going to come back out here tomorrow after work and pick up where I left off here. So I've marked the replacement panel that I want to, where I want to trim it off here. Don't need it quite so high. If I left it up that high, it'd put the weld up so high against the body mount brace here that it would be hard to get in on the other side, like from the front side, and grind that weld smooth. I can get to most of the stuff up here just fine, but from the bottom side, I'd have a section where I had it, you know, ground and smoothed off nice, and then the section under here where I can't get to it, that would look kind of bad, and then over here. So I want to leave it down here just so I have enough room that maybe I can get in there, you know, like with my little belt sander tool. That thing works pretty well. I can get up in there and just smooth the welds down. But I got the flange cleaned up on this piece, so it's looking pretty good. And I left about 1 inch around or so where I'm going to put the new panel. This flange I can cut off. Probably use the air chisel to cut that thing off. Use one of my favorite tools out here in the shop. Call him Freddy, because if there's a problem, Freddy will fix it. But anyway, I'll pick this back up tomorrow, so I'll see you guys then. So it's a couple days later. I stopped after doing the grinding and cutting out the floor, the preliminary cut for the patch. I cut an undersized hole here in the passenger side toe board on purpose, so that I can sneak up on it when I trim the new panel to size with this one. But yeah, while I was throwing all the sparks at the camera, the sparks kind of bonded into the lens cover for the GoPro, so I had to order up another one, because when I was doing one of these post time-lapse discussions the other night, I noticed it was the image quality was kind of poor, because there's all these spots on it for where the sparks had melted into the glass, so I couldn't just scrape it off, so I had to order a new one. Not too expensive, you know, it's a sacrificial part, so, but it was a couple days. So I'm back out here, and of course temperature is back down again, so I had to fire up the space heaters in here. I didn't have them running like I did whenever it was continuously cold, so it's going to take a little bit to get it up. It shouldn't be too bad. It'll be about an hour and it'll be nice and cozy in here, but for the time being, got my trusty old cap back on and the old Lucky's Garage sweater, you know, good for working out in the shop. Anyway, I'll get started here on the next step. I'm planning on cutting the flange off here, so I'm going to locate and grind on the spot welds that was holding the toe board section to the flange coming off of the pillar, and the cowl assembly here. Get that all cleaned up and prepped and ready to go from down in the corner here up to the upper portion of the cut line. And then I'll trim back the panel over here how I want it. I've got that marked here, so I'm going to cut it off there along this line, and then also right here in this radius. So I like to weld on an outside or outside bend if I can. This being an inside bend on the inside of the cab is an outside bend inside the engine compartment, so I can get it really smoothed off and cleaned up after I get the weld done. So I plan on cutting it over, you know, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch or so here, so the new panel will go right in that ditch right here where the transition is. But anyway, I'll get this camera set up and we'll get back to work. well, that flange is cleaned up and looking pretty good. I went after it, like you kind of saw me do it the same way I did with the floor seams or floor flange around the wheel tubs, where I kind of peeled up the flange that was left and then used the burr on the spots where the welds were, and just kind of used some pliers and peel it up to the next spot weld and then go again. This metal in this area was 4 pieces thick. What's left right here is still 3 pieces. So one, this little triangular piece for the support brace between the cowl and the lower pillar, and then you have the cowl metal that also goes to that for the inside piece, and then also for the outside shell of that cowl that goes to the air inlet up on the windshield, so the cowl vent area. Anyway, 3 panels thick, and the spot welds didn't look like they were all lining up with each other through all the metal. I think some panels were pinched together and then pushed up against other pieces and then pinched again. So I didn't think drilling through, which I could only actually do from the other side because this is so tight and close to this edge, there's not enough room for me to like get my drill bit on there square. So I just went with the roll and grind method, and that seemed to work pretty well. And then I just used the burr tool when I got up to the very top. Couldn't quite get off at that with the cutoff wheel to make a nice edge, so I just ground the metal thin right there and just fatigued it off to break it straight, and then got after it with the wire wheel to kind of strip and clean this down. I'll give it a coat of rust converter just to seal off any of the surface rust that's right here that I didn't get with the grinder and the wire brush, and I'll get it all prepped and nice and ready to go for welding the new panel in. Alright, I've got the panel trimmed up now. Got some holes drilled in it, preliminary ones. I've got a Sharpie mark here and here. That's where that support brace for the firewall is going to be going. So I'm going to leave that for the moment so that I can match drill when I decide where the holes are going to be on that support brace flange and get them all lined up right. I didn't want to go through and drill here and then have to measure or guess when putting that in. But I got the floor rough cut out. I still need to go through with the sander and get the edges perfectly cleaned up. But one nice thing about doing this particular installation is you got to be pretty precise with the edge here and along the top, because from the top to this portion is kind of a critical thing. But over to the side, since it's just laying over the top of this piece, left to right, I've got a little wiggle room right here for a location on the panel. It can slide a little bit because it's sitting on top of this other flange, so it's not like I cut just a rectangular hole out of a flat piece and I'm trying to put it back in. So it does give a little bit of leeway having one edge that's an overlapped edge, so that's kind of nice. But I was looking through and I didn't have the camera going whenever I had the trim cuts and stuff going for that panel, so my apologies. Lost the video. It either started and stopped after a few seconds or just never got going. So I'll try and show what I can as I get going here for this part. This is third day out here. When I got done the other day, I called it quits and went in the house after I got the holes drilled in the panel and stuff. So just kind of taking it easy, you know, doing 1 to 2 hours out here after work and such. But today's Saturday. I did plan on getting out here in the morning and getting going, but I had to do some overtime for work, so put it off a little bit. But gotta get this thing zapped in and wrapped up for you guys. So I put out that teaser that I got a video coming this weekend, so I'm gonna make darn sure I get one out for you. So here we go. time to stop and share. So I remembered when I walked around on this side and I was getting the clamps on that I hadn't ground the paint away from that edge yet on this side. And yeah, I don't like the smell of burning paint. Ugh. Or primer or whatever, you know, nasty. So grinding that off, it'll keep the welds from getting porosity in them. When you have clean metal on the back side, you know, it's important to prep both sides of your weld seam on sheet metal, because when the weld puddle is liquid, it's liquid on both sides. So whatever contaminant you have on the back side will flow up onto the side that you're welding from, just as if it was contaminated on the front side. So get in there and clean that junk off. It takes just a few seconds with the roll lock disc and looks a lot better. And then I ran into an issue where along the bottom edge where the I'll get this light, where the lip turns down and attaches to the flange on the floor here, right there, and slips in between the brace here and the floor. The contours aren't quite perfect, so whenever I was clamping down here, it actually pulled the gap at the top of that panel. So what I'm going to do is get the panel gaps that I want, and then use my trusty old hammer and dolly and kind of knock the flange down along the bottom side so that they are a bit closer, and then I'll use the clamps to suck in the joint. Yeah, I thought I could get it to bend without pulling through, but if you saw in that last time lapse, you might have watched the panel gap open up, and it went from, you know, the thickness of these neat little welding clamps to, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or bigger. A lot bigger than I was wanting to get for the panel fit up. So I pulled the panel back off. You see, I was having a little trouble with these things, like the way they work. They've got this square dowel that goes through the square hole in here and makes it flush, and then when you squeeze and tighten this thing down, it pulls the panel on either side of that flush. It's really kind of a neat thing. But on the side, the two side clamps, you know, the square pins going in horizontally, so I could just set it in there loosely, walk around to the other side, turn the wing nut slowly until it got some tension, and go. But on the upper piece, this thing is pointing vertically, so it dropped down. So I actually finally wised up and grabbed some of my fit up magnets. Don't really use these that much for actually holding something in unless it's a really small patch. But yeah, it came in handy to get it started with the clamps, and it also came in really handy because I could stick the magnet next to that square piece and just hold it in place with a magnet until I could get it tightened. So kind of a fun little tip. I like these clamps a lot for this type of fit up when you're doing a butt weld on a flat portion. They're really pretty handy for getting your panels lined up nice. That was something when I was a welder back in the day doing sheet metal work and stuff. I was doing a long straight seam. It was hard to keep the seams from waving back and forth. You know, they kind of do a crisscross thing, and it was always a pain. You know, you do a tack and then it kind of bends one way and bends the other. With these things, I can get them pretty well clamped up where I want and run the tacks in pretty quick while it's all straight. So I like those things. They're pretty cheap. You get them at Harbor Freight, Eastwood, all sorts of places have them. I got them in for Harbor Freight because they're cheap. Certain things at Harbor Freight, not a big fan of. Stuff like this, I actually kind of like it. They work pretty well and not too expensive, you know. So, and be choosy and you get some decent stuff there. So, anyway, let's see what I want to do. I think I want to put that panel back on, get it reclamped up into position. I might do a little preliminary hammer bashing here to get ready. Bend that flange down just a little bit, but yeah, I'll get the holes drilled in that piece, get this thing clamped back up, and start running some tacks along that top side and inboard side. And then after I get it tacked pretty well into place, then I'll go for the clamps and get it all sucked up. But you guys will see it. I'll get it set up here. So I think I got the fit up on the panel about as good as it's gonna get, and it's looking pretty nice and uniform. There's a little bit of a wider opening right here, but I can deal with it. It'll be all right. Otherwise, yeah, fitting up pretty nice. Press that in right there, and I can run the welds through the holes there. And yeah, one of the nice parts about using this style of clamp is you got the width of this piece. You know, that thin piece of metal is your kerf instead of the thickness of a cutoff wheel. So this is actually a little smaller, except for right about there is about the thickness of a cutoff wheel. Everything else is about half that gap. It's a lot tighter. So that'll make a nice weld without getting the metal too hot. And I tell you what, I kind of did the light fixture thing here as a joke. I had it used to be sitting over the window on that end. I forgot to put it back up whenever I hung the lights back up after doing some of the insulation. I repositioned them, moved some of the outlets around up there, and anyway, so I was sitting around and someone mentioned that it was kind of dark in the videos inside the cab, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll get some light going here, fine. So put the clamps in with that chain on this thing, but I tell you what, it's the most fantastic little work drop light I've ever had. It's wonderful to have this much light in there. You know, had to grab the little portable light for the front side because I don't have any lights in that forward part of the shop, which I've thought about hanging a couple over there, you know, where they'd clear the door, and I just might put a pair over there just so I can have some uniform light in here and make sure everybody can see really well. But I think this thing's about ready for me to run the first set of tack welds to hold it in place, and then I can start doing some beading and do a little bit of drilling. I still have to drill the flange also for that hump section to go to the floor trans hump. So I realized that when I was on that side doing that grinding. I looked up and was like, oh yeah, those aren't stuck together either. So yeah, I'll grab the drill bit and run some of those in, but I'm going to get this thing tacked first. I'm ready to start doing some welding. So hopefully this thing doesn't go into that mode like it did last time, like on time lapse, being set up and like snapping into some like dark lens mode, whatever, the white balance getting so thrown off that it looked like looking through a welding helmet. But since I'm going to be running tacks and then stopping, I can check and make sure that way it's not, you know, me working out here for half an hour with the camera being all funky. So anyway, I'll stop chatting, get the welder fired up, and we'll start burning some wire. beautiful day. I called it quits last night. It was getting later. I was just got a headache, and it was about done last night, so decided I'd pick up today. Anyway, kind of go over what I got accomplished. Got the initial set of tacks on. Kind of see the full penetration melt through on this side, and I actually welded all those tacks from the far side, from the inside there, so that's looking good. I think I'm gonna run the rest of them as many as I can, except for the part that's hidden by the brace here from this outside, and then I'll get that intersection from the inside. Yeah, I've got the lower flange clamped on, welded together, support brace welded to that flange, so it's going pretty good. But I'd filmed a outro when I got done last night, and I was like, I'm gonna pick up on the next video, but nah, I decided to keep going on this one, actually see it through. So I've got the inside here. This corner's fit up pretty nice. The inner flange is welded together where you've got the overlapping seam, and I also put a little bit of a tack from the front side just to make sure it's good. And I'll do the same thing here. You know, I'm welding the flanges together on the pinch on the bottom side, but I'm still going to put a couple little tacks in this ditch on the top, and it'll be covered with seam sealer, so won't cause any problems. It'll just make it even stronger. But yeah, I'll get the welder set up for today and get after it. Another thing I wanted to do, it took about 45 minutes and kind of cleaned up everything that was around here. Still have an issue with the box for the rear end. Horizontal surfaces attract clutter, no kidding. So really looking forward to I finish up the weld here and do some of the grinding, and I'm gonna put all the tools back and reset before I get going on the next side, because it's gonna be another big thing, and I don't want to be looking around trying to find all my tools, because I was kind of doing that last night too and just getting frustrated, so I called it quits. But anyway, I'll get this set up and start burning in the rest of this panel and keep at it. I got most of this ground down. I got a few pinholes to come back and touch up. Since I welded it from the inside, as the weld metal cooled on the inside, it pulled the metal towards the inside, so there's a little bit of a valley, which is okay. I won't be able to perfectly metal finish this exactly smooth. I'll get it really close, and then a really thin coat of filler, and that'll be completely invisible. So I'm happy enough with it. It'll be down, tucked in, and then on the inside here, this is about as far as I'm going to go with this one. Worked it pretty close. You know, there's a little bit here and there. It's where, you know, this panel was down a little bit compared to this upper one for this part, so there's a little low spot right here, and then a low spot up on this side and down here, and, you know, it kind of waved a bit, which I could take care of with some hammer and dolly work. But I didn't want to pull the door off to try and get to it on the other side, and this is going to be covered by carpet, and I can use a little filler on the far side. So if it was a Class A surface, you know, something that you'd be able to see in paint or from the outside, I'd go ahead and hammer and dolly and work it until it's all smooth and everything. But for this one, it's good enough. It's better than it was. Nice and not rotten anymore, so that's fantastic. So next one coming up is over there on the driver's side, and there's a bit more that's going to be involved with that one. I've got some rot on the side panel, the kick panel beside the toe board, so there's going to be a bit of patching that I've got to do once I cut the floor out. So I've got to cut a section of the floor out, fix the surrounding structure before I can put the new floor piece in. So that one's going to take a little bit more work, but should make a cooler video. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. Channel's been growing pretty well, kind of steady. So guess somebody's liking what I'm putting out. But thanks again everybody for helping me grow, and I'll catch you next time.